Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Rowe. I am the chairman of the House Republican Policy Committee. I also have the privilege of representing the 85th Legislative District, which covers Union, Snyder, Juniata, and Mifflin counties, an easy about 3-hour drive northwest of here. I'm going to turn it over to the members for introductions, starting with Chairwoman White.
Well, welcome. Good morning, everyone. I'm State Representative Martina White. You are actually sitting in my district here in the 170th Legislative District in Northeast Philadelphia. Thank you again for attending and participating.
Hello, this is Kristen Marcel. I am from the 178th District in Bucks County, in the middle of Bucks County. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Barb Gleim. I'm a representative from the 199th District in Cumberland County.
I want to thank you all for attending today. I want to thank our guests. I want to thank our testifiers. We might also have some members that are able to join us online throughout, coming on and coming off as they can, as schedules allow. I want to specifically thank the Community College of Philadelphia for hosting us here today, for sharing this space. We know that higher education certainly plays a very important role in pursuing the American dream for countless people across the Commonwealth. We have the Luzerne Luzerne County Community College up that serves my part of the state, and they do a fantastic job really just helping folks find that life path that sets them up for long-term success. Creating pathways to employment, upward economic mobility, offering projects and careers that connect students to those on-demand, family-sustaining jobs that we need to fill in the Commonwealth if we are going to continue to grow our economy, and really set Pennsylvania up for long-term competitiveness and long-term success. I want to thank Representative Martina White, who is a member of our House leadership team. She is our caucus chair. I want to thank her very much for hosting us here today. It's quite a bit of work putting these hearings together, so I'm going to turn things over to Chairwoman White for some opening remarks.
Great. All right, and yes, I would like to echo the sentiments regarding the Community College of Philadelphia. They've been an incredible asset to our community and very grateful for the work that they do. So again, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much to Chairman Rowe and the members of the Policy Committee for taking the time to come all the way to Northeast Philadelphia to join us in this discussion about the School District of Philadelphia. I appreciate everyone being here today, particularly our testifiers. As elected officials, we share a common goal, ensuring that every student in Pennsylvania receives a high-quality education, including those here in the Philadelphia Public School District. Our students are our top priority, and it's our responsibility to make sure that the district is using its resources effectively and efficiently to improve student outcomes. Northeast Philadelphia families have had enough of a lot of things, but in particular, the overcrowded schools. Parents and guardians, they've been stuck in a broken lottery system, applying year after year, only to be waitlisted again and again. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia School Board hasn't approved a single new charter school in years, blocking opportunities to expand capacity and provide more students with a quality education. Families are desperate for options. Many are forced to pay for private school out of pocket while still shouldering Philadelphia's high school taxes, essentially paying twice just to secure a decent education for their child. This is unacceptable. It's time to put students first, expand high-quality school options, and give families real choices. Our kids cannot wait. The state has continued to increase spending on public education by billions of dollars over the last decade. Just this past year, increasing spending by $1.1 billion for K-12 education funding statewide, while outcomes for kids have shown little to no improvement, particularly when it comes to literacy, which is a huge predictor of future success. Parents have every right to be concerned that their child is being trapped in a failing school, that they aren't being provided the curriculum necessary for their child to reach their full potential. And that is why I have been a big proponent of school choice. Today's hearing is an important opportunity to examine the financial management practices of the district, especially as it faces a projected budget shortfall of $442 million for the 25-26 school year. That will only grow if not addressed. By working together, though, we can find and identify solutions that ensure that every dollar is spent wisely and that our students have the support that they need to thrive. Our testifiers include the Philadelphia School District, which was invited to participate in the hearing here in person. However, they were unavailable to attend, but they have provided us written testimony. Christian Barnard from the Reason Foundation to provide a third-party perspective on spending occurring in the Philadelphia School District. And then we also have here today Shannon Mitchell, a parent of multiple students in the district. She's going to share her story of years-long battle to get her children the services that they need and the education that they deserve. Her story raises serious concerns about how and where current dollars are being spent and the effort parents go through to help their children when dealing with the Philadelphia School District. These firsthand experiences highlight the urgency of our work here today. But separately, I want you to know that my office has received multiple firsthand accounts and information regarding waste, fraud, and mismanagement from people who were so concerned, though, about retribution by the school district that they actually refused to testify publicly. While these are currently speculative assertions against the school district, I do want those individuals to know that we will be working directly with the school district and appropriate state agencies to corroborate the information that you've provided and also ensure that these issues are addressed. So thank you very much again, Mr. Chairman, for hosting this today, and I look forward to the testimony from our speakers.
Thank you, Chairwoman Wright. As Chairwoman White so eloquently stated, the status quo in education simply is not working for students and their families in the school district of Philadelphia. Despite that, Philadelphia truly is steeped in a legacy of educational excellence, but we're contrasting that today with the struggles of the city's K-12 public education system. It's a painful disconnect for the families, for the parents, for the students, and even for the teachers in the school district. It's a city known for shaping great minds with a storied history, but unfortunately, too many children of Pennsylvania's futures are being eroded as a result of the lack of accountability here in the school district. No parent, and we're going to hear a little bit more about this today, but no parent should ever have to watch their child struggle in a less than ideal learning environment, and no child should ever have to fear for their safety at school. All Pennsylvania students deserve access to the high-quality education that will allow them to pursue their American dream in safe, stable environments, and we are here today to figure out how to do just that. Chairwoman White already introduced our excellent testifiers today. You will both have 3 to 5 minutes of testimony time. If you want to, we only have 2 testifiers today. We normally have 3 or 4, so take a couple extra minutes if you need to, but we definitely want to leave time for question and answers because I know we'll have some for both of you. I do want to also reference that the School District of Philadelphia did submit written testimony, which is available in the members' packets. Mr. Barnard, you're up first.
Thank you to the committee for having me, Chairman Rowe, Chairwoman White. Thank you so much for having this hearing. I think it's really important to investigate any instance of waste, fraud, and abuse in school districts or any kind of government. But importantly, it's also important to zoom out and examine just the general financial practices of school districts as well. A lot of the times, the waste, fraud, and abuse are not specific instances, but they're patterns over time of how money is managed, how staff are utilized, and how resources are deployed. So what I want to do is just present quickly on just a little bit of a dive into the data of what the Philadelphia School District has done with resources, specifically since the pandemic. Some of the charts that I will take you through are going to go a little further back, but I'm mainly looking at how resources have been used since fiscal year 2020. I also want to just preface with saying that I'm excluding charter school revenues and enrollment from everything that I'm showing here. So I'm just talking about the city's schools. So if you would just follow along in the packets, just quickly, I work with the Reason Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit think tank. I'm the Assistant Director of Education Reform with the education team, but we have a number of other teams that work in other policy areas. So quick overview on page 3. What I'm just very quickly going to do is talk about the revenue, enrollment, staffing trends, just the resources that generally the district has received. And then I'm going to look at expenditure trends, comparisons with other school districts in the state. And then finally, I'll finish with just kind of a quick assessment of the financial health of the Philadelphia School District. And I'm going to be comparing Philadelphia specifically to the largest school districts in the nation. So first, revenue, staffing, and enrollment. The first thing, so I'm now on slide 5 with the scatter plot there. The first thing I just want to cover is that the Philadelphia School District, especially thanks to the recent infusion of pandemic COVID relief dollars, is one of the highest funded large school districts in the state. So on this chart here, I have the 65 largest school districts in Pennsylvania. On the x-axis there, it's plotted their poverty rate. Philadelphia is the 4th highest funded at $28,867 per student. I think it's also noteworthy that there are some higher poverty districts that are receiving less resources than the district, like Reading, Harrisburg, Allentown. So That's, I think, an important framing point. That includes all funds, state, federal, and local. Next slide. Often what we're, especially now since the pandemic, what we're hearing is that inflation is eating into the increases in education spending. This is certainly true. Nationwide, we've seen other states that have actually lost ground in their per pupil spending because inflation was very high for a few years. But what this chart is showing is the rate of inflation. This is the rate of per pupil spending increase from the state. The statewide average, as you can see on this chart, is just past the rate of inflation. I just want to note this doesn't mean that the state has not been committed to increasing funding. Like I said, there's a lot of other states that have actually lost ground in relation to inflation. But it's noteworthy that the Philadelphia School District, the revenue gains this district has made have far outpaced inflation, so by 12.6 percentage points. So to say that inflation is part of the reason that the district is having resource struggles, in per student terms, their funding increases have well outpaced inflation. The next slide. So the question now is then, what generally have they done with these resources? So since the pandemic, the district has lost nearly 10% of its student population. During that same period of time, support staff has increased by 8.2%. Professional personnel, which is largely administrator-related staff, have increased the most by 28.9%. And interestingly, classroom teacher hiring actually lagged hiring of non-instructional personnel. The next slide. This is the trend that concerns me the most, I think, about the school district, is the school-level enrollment trends. Since the pandemic, 61.8% of the city's schools have lost 10% or more of their students. 42.4%, so not too far away from half of the city's schools, have lost 20% of their students or more. So generally, the rule of thumb in school finance is that if you've lost 20% or more of your students, you are possibly at risk of closure. The fact that almost half of your schools are in that camp is definitely concerning. I'll say too, I did a quick examination of school closures. I know that the city has a difficult history with school closures, especially shortly after the Great Recession. And I know the city is now moving forward with some conversations about pursuing school closures, but I do think it's worth noting that over the time of these enrollment losses, there really have not been many school building closures. Okay, expenditure trends, and I'm just going to keep moving quickly. On slide 10, so what I'm doing now is just comparing how does the Philadelphia School District spend money compared with the other large school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. So the share of total expenditures, how is it prioritizing dollars? So on the slide here, I just have rankings. Compared to the other districts in the state, how do they rank? 54th in current expenditure share, that means that they're spending a large sum of their resources on long-term investments like debt or capital or facilities improvement. 60th least in instructional share, but then in the top 10 in support services, administration, and facilities, acquisition, and construction and improvement share. So relative to the other large school districts in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia is spending a lot of its resources on non-instructional functions and facilities costs. Next slide, slide 11. How new money has been spent since the pandemic. So this is just not inflation adjusted, just raw increase since fiscal year 20, 380 million increase in nominal expenditures. It's notable, I mean, personnel, especially instructional salaries, that's going to be the biggest component of a school district's costs. It's usually around 80 to 90% of a school district's cost is just labor, the personnel that they're hiring. It's notable that property services are almost actually, there are a large chunk of where new dollars have gone. So again, to recap, they've spent a lot of their new money on new staff, salary increases, but then again, a lot of the resources are going to facilities upgrades, new construction, those kinds of things. Finally, I'm just going to talk quickly about their financial health. Okay, slide 13. The state also publishes data on the outstanding long and short-term debt of the school districts in the state. The big takeaway here is that while there have been some improvements since fiscal year 21 specifically, at one point, their outstanding debt in total was $69,000 per student, more than double what they spend per student. That has slightly improved, but they still have double the total outstanding debt in relationship to their total expenditures. So what I'm showing here is in fiscal year 24, their total outstanding debt is over it's $61,559 per student. Total expenditures are $27,620 per student. So they owe more than double what they're spending per child. I'll also note here that a big part of this outstanding debt picture is their OPEB pension liabilities, which is something they have to be aware of when they're making hiring decisions. Next, okay, slide 14. This is really interesting. So one of the criteria that the state establishes for potentially being in financial recovery status is having a low reserve balance, meaning that you spend almost all the money that you receive. You don't save any money to roll over from one year to the next. Since fiscal year 15, the Philadelphia School District has consistently carried below 3% fund balance, which is part of the reason that it's had a low credit rating for so long. What's interesting is that you see this number shoot up. My data only gets up to fiscal year 24. This number is higher now. What they've done with COVID relief money is they have built their reserves, and it looks kind of like they are preparing for the fiscal cliff, for the federal dollars to be gone, and that's basically where we are right now. I know the school district is looking at structural deficits ongoing for the next 5 years, and so what I expect is for them to return back to kind of the norm of having low reserve fund balances. They're going to dip into this money that they have been saving thanks to the $1.1 billion in federal COVID relief aid that they received. Next slide. So I'll just finish quickly with this. We have a government finance team at Reason that collects certified annual financial report data for thousands of state, local, municipal governments, including the largest school districts in the country. So this is a question people often have is, okay, how does my district or how does my state compare to other states or other districts in other states? So again, I've ranked Philadelphia in relation to these largest 100 school districts in the country. Philadelphia has the 4th highest debt ratio of those 100 school districts. So again, 1.914 liabilities to assets. That correlates with the chart I was speaking through earlier. 3rd highest in liabilities per student. Note that this data lags a little bit, so that $69,000 number has come down somewhat. 13th lowest free cash flow per student, which is basically the money that they have to they're accruing more expenses than they're paying down. And then finally, they're 24th highest in bonds loans per student. So the takeaway here is that they are one of the most highly leveraged school districts in the country. Okay, so thank you all for bearing with me. Summary takeaways. Philadelphia is one of the highest funded school districts in the state. Funding growth has outpaced inflation by a wide margin. They've continued adding staff, especially non-instructional staff, despite large enrollment loss. Nearly half of the city's schools would be considered at risk of closure. Disproportionate new spending on capital projects, facilities. COVID-19 relief aid was used to make new ongoing commitments. School districts knew that this was temporary money, but Philadelphia generally used this money to build their cash reserves, plug budget holes, that kind of thing. And then recent improvements to the general fund balance and debt load have helped improve their financial standing somewhat. But again, it remains one of the highest debt school districts in the nation. Okay, what can it do to improve its financial health? And I think these are things that the city's already looking at, the district's already looking at. So school consolidation, I think, is a clear one. Controlling staffing growth. That's something that credit raters would, I think, be happy with if they started reining in their expenses, especially if they've lost almost 10% of their students since the pandemic. Reassess facilities improvement plans. I know the district has ongoing facilities improvement plans, but it's worth evaluating if that is sustainable, since it's facing significant structural deficits. And then I'd also say maintain and strengthen their general fund reserve balance. So don't go back to having less than 3% of your total expenditures in your general fund reserves. They need to basically not be so close to being in a deficit year to year. And finally, I'll just end with this. If increased state aid comes, it still won't fix the structural deficit issue. I understand that because the adequacy lawsuit resolution, the district wants $1 billion in new funding to satisfy the target adequacy number, but they're actually facing structural deficits greater than that amount. So they cannot count on the state to solve this problem for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barnard. Ms. Mitchell.
Hi, Ms. Mitchell. Well, you can all just call me Shannon. It's not a big deal. I'm not my mother-in-law. Well, Ms. Martina White knew me from last time. I am actually a mom of 3. I have 2 special needs children. My son, who is Caleb, he just turned 11. And my daughter, Brianna, who is 9. I've been fighting with the school district since day one. I've always wanted my children to have the best of the best, because that's what parents are supposed to do, is give their children the best of the best. Me, I've always grown up in a Catholic household, and I always wanted my kids to go to private Catholic educations. But unfortunately, having 2 special needs, the Catholic education cannot fulfill their needs. So we turned to, quote unquote, Philadelphia School District of Philadelphia. Our zone, quote unquote zone, was Thomas Home. Thomas Home is actually not the same zip code. We actually are the same zip code as John Hancock, which John Hancock, as many as you know, is a blue ribbon school. So we wanted our son to go there because he was the first one to be diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. He went through Spin, he went through Elwyn, and it wasn't the best of the best, if my personal opinion. They lost sight of what they're supposed to be there for. So we fought to the nail and teeth to get our son into John Hancock, lost. They told us that he'd be well taken care of at Thomas Home. He was, not gonna lie, he was okay for a little bit, but then we saw regression. We saw him, coming home crying, saying, "Mommy, I don't want to go to school no more." We're asking him why, and he's like, "The kids hate me," or "The teachers are yelling at me," and so forth. So we ended up suing the school district. That was our first time. And we got what we needed. We got him more speech, more therapy, anything that we can ask for. Comes our daughter, Brianna. Now, Brianna is, I can't explain how Brianna is. Brianna is a hell on fire. She is a little redhead, freckles, blue eyes, everything. If you have little girls, Brave, the movie Brave, that's my daughter. That's quote unquote Brianna. She is a force to be reckoned with. She is not afraid of anything except birds. We have no idea where the birds came from, but she is not afraid of spiders, snakes, tarantulas, anything of that nature. And here's Mommy in the corner, kill it, just kill it. She would go right there and go, "All right, let's go. What's the next bug I need to kill?" Brianna is a unique child. She was diagnosed of autism at the age of 2. She was an eloper. She escaped our house several different times, several different ways. We never figured out how. So we, of course, spent millions on a fence around our yard. We got dogs, we got alarms, we got bells, we got every nook and cranny. Got it. So that was one taken care of. When it came to her education, we caught it in time, so she started early intervention. Now, early intervention is something that the therapists come to the home. They start with the children early. They gave them speech, OT, PT, anything you could possibly name of. And then she transitioned over to Spin. She didn't get much Spin because COVID happened. Now, Brianna is a nonverbal child. She didn't speak at that time. She didn't even say a word. She just stimmed, which is, screaming, stuff like that. When we started with spin, COVID happened. They expected me to put this child in front of a computer. I'm like, how am I supposed to, this child won't even sit for 2 seconds, let alone 15 seconds. How am I supposed to do this? And they were like, well, you have to figure out or you're gonna lose the services. So I was like, okay, fine, no problem. So what do? Being a smart parent that I am, I just, go ahead, B, do whatever you need to do, go, go, go. Chasing this child around the whole living room in my basement at the time on a camera. Go ahead, teacher. What do you want me to do? How do you want me to sit her down? How do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And they're like, well, you have to figure something out. What do you want me to do? So then she goes back to school, mask. Before, the whole mask thing, we practiced. She was doing really well. Then we ended up in Thomas Home. Again, she had the same teacher as my son did last year. And we were told she was doing excellent, but then all of a sudden they're like, well, she needs to be put on medicine. Did not know teachers were medical doctors. They kept saying she needs to be put on this type of medicine, that type of medicine. And I'm like, well, sorry, if her doctor says no, I'm gonna stay with her doctor. She's the doctor, you're the teacher. So it was like a battle. There was an instance where Brianna at the old school, she actually went through a plate glass window because she had, she got mad and she went through the window, and the teacher said, never called me. The nurse never called me. I only got the nurse coming out to me. She's like, Brianna's okay. And I'm like, well, what happened? Like, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, she went through a window. What do you mean she went through a window? She's like, you might want to check up on her tetanus shots. And I'm like, okay, great, wonderful, perfect. So called the doctor, like a concerned parent, took her to the doctor. The doctor's like, she's fine, everything's great, keep it clean and stuff like that. So that was the first no that you were gonna do with me. Then, like I said, Thomas Home is being currently rebuilt, so they went to Austin Mann. Then we ended up getting a new principal. The principal, not for short terms, is not my cup of tea, if that makes sense. He didn't make me feel like my kids are safe. He did not make me feel like these kids are gonna be taught. He was more concerned of the neurotypical, whereas children on the spectrum, they need a little bit more focus. They're being forgotten, plain and simple. These children are being forgotten. My child, Brianna, when we finally got ABA services is basically therapy sessions with a behavior therapist that goes in and kind of teaches you how to have her sit, how to sit on a table for 45 minutes and stuff like that. They were going in there. The administrative director actually thought a BCH, who is not, by the way, not a 101 or an aide or any of, they're actually part of the group of an ABA services, and they're supposed to do what the what the therapist is supposed to do. The administrative director actually thought that she was a 101. I'm like, no, she's not a 101. She's just there for 45 minutes, like not even. She's like, well, she has to be there all day. No, you have an aide. You're supposed to give me an aide for her in order for me to work with the BCH and the therapist. No, you have it all backwards. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. That was the second time. Come to find out that my daughter was not even getting speech for the whole year. The whole year they were in that school, that satellite school, she was not even getting speech. So I'm like, great, I didn't even know about this. I could have gotten her speech outside the school district. Didn't even know that. Quote, my therapist, who is a blessing in disguise, she actually went into the school and did a surprise visit. When she went in, she told me that my daughter was in the back of the classroom with toys, not being interacted with, no aide, no teacher, no nobody. There was actually 2 aides that were for other kids, and they were actually sitting on the opposite side of the classroom on their cell phones. Mind you, now I'm pissed, because now how long has this been going on? Because I don't know. I'm not there 24/7. I can't be there 24/7. If I was, then, things would have been different. But so that kind of actually brought me, that was back in October 2023. We started that process suing the school district. We sued it for my son too, because obviously he wasn't getting speech therapy and OT therapy. So we did this whole process. The meeting was canceled twice because their therapist or whoever was not available or whatever. I didn't even care at that point. I just kind of was like, I'm going to get this done. When the meeting happened, it was actually February 25th, a Monday, and they agreed to our terms for Caleb. Caleb was taken care of. But when it came to my daughter, they're like, we have to send her away. We can't handle her no more. So this is kind of like, you made me wait this long. You could have told me something from the get-go. And my daughter have not gotten anything since now. So I'm like, okay, cool, great. So then the next day they gave me a list of schools, approved schools by the School District of Philadelphia. Now the School District of Philadelphia they approved them. So basically they were going to transfer her from one crappy school to a next, is how I call it. And on the top of the list, there was actually 3 schools that they were not willing to pay. It was basically tuition paid. So, of course, me being the mom who I am, like, no, you're going to pay for her school. You denied her school. You denied school for how long? And now you're going to tell me you want to send her to another crappy school? No, sorry, not going to happen. We went off that list, and I got her into the best school ever. Fought 7 months. We didn't even know she was going to the school until the week before school started. I fought to the nail and teeth every day. I didn't even have a vacation that year. Did not even have a vacation because I was worried sick to where I wasn't going to send her back. It wasn't even, I feel sick every day sending my son back to that same school. But I know the teacher and me have a great communication, open line. She tells me things and I get it done for her. And if she needs something, I get her, whatever she needs, I'm there for her. When my daughter started the school, first week of school, she came home, and I kid you not, they couldn't get her to talk at the old school. When my daughter came home from the bus, she comes off that bus and says, "Hi, Mama, I love you." When I tell you, when you hear your child speak, but this is at the age of 8, she told me in a full sentence, "Mama, I love you." That was kind of like the one thing that I knew that I had to still continue to do fight for this child. Because this child deserved everything, and she is getting everything to this day, because I fought to the nail and teeth. That was, the best day of my life. Even though giving birth to my kids is the best day, but that was the second best day of my life, because I heard my daughter, for the very first time, tell me I love you. Because at 8 years old, you would think your child would talk to you at 2, 3. My daughter spoke to me for the first time at 8. And I can tell you right now, I would do it over and over and over again for my kids. Now, I just finally closed her case. This happened back in 2023. We're in 2025. I actually just signed the paperwork stating that the case is closed. She got her compensation the week before Easter happened in 2025. And I can tell you right now, I am so over the Philadelphia School District, it's not even funny. And I'm also tired of the fact that these kids, these nonverbal, artistic kids are being treated like crap. I mean, we have Elon Musk, for crying out loud, and he's working in the White House, and he's artistic. We have Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins was just diagnosed with some type of autism. Everybody has this little bit of autism. These kids deserve a chance, and they deserve to have a classroom where they can walk in and be proud of what they're doing. And they're not being proud. They're basically being treated like little mouses, and they're going to be put in the corner for the rest of their life until somebody actually speaks up, because we don't have anybody. In all honesty, I'm probably the only parent that's willing to speak, because I'm tired of it. I'm tired of seeing these kids get treated like crap, and I want something to change for these kids and these parents, because these parents don't deserve any of it. They don't deserve nothing. But that's my story. I'd like to thank you to hear it again, but thank you.
Well, thank you very much for fighting. You shouldn't have had to, but I think it demonstrates the importance of parental advocacy and parental involvement, because if it wasn't for your willingness to sacrifice all of that time to step up and stand up for your children, they'd still be stuck in a school that was failing them. So thank you very much for standing up for our future, because that's what our kids are. I'm going to turn it over to members for questions. Would you go first? Chair White? Okay. Representative Barb Gleim.
Thank you for both being here and testifying today. I've been on the Education Committee in the House. I'm in my 7th year. And in my first year, I was here, we had the opportunity to tour a lot of the Philadelphia schools and see some of the construction projects that they were doing. I did go away with the visual that they were upgrading their administrative offices and buildings, and it looked like they were preparing to hire in that arena rather than teachers and upgrading some of the actual classrooms that were within the district. So I have just a few questions for you. In your data, did it include the lead abatement that was also sent to the Philadelphia School District? I think it was in the last budget. And did it also include school safety and security dollars that were sent?
It included all dollars. So I was looking at expenditure data. So obviously, when you look at the revenue data, you can see maybe what grants it comes from. When they're spending it, it's not always easy to see where it comes from. So the short answer is, I can see the purpose, the function, or the object of the expenditure, but I can't always see the source. But I can say that anything that was a purchased property service, construction, facilities improvement, anything that you just mentioned would be included under that expenditure category, so long as it was actually spent.
Okay. And then I looked at the school district's testimony here, and they're in their testimony, they're saying that they increased the number of students with regular attendance. And there's roughly 118,000 students, I think, in the school district, which is only 3%. Yet they've hired professional staff up to 29%,
Right.
and support staff up to 8.2%.
Right.
So do you think that that perhaps, do you know where that monies or that percentage increase is actually being used, within the district?
Yeah. So the support staff, that's usually school level staff. So it covers a huge range of types of positions. It can be instructional aides, it can be specialists as well, although usually the specialists who are providing the kinds of services that Shannon, correct? That Shannon was just talking about, that's usually, I think, a professional staff at the district level. But they're broad categories that I can give you more of the breakdown. But unfortunately, with the state data, I cannot see what schools these staff are going to. So I'd love to get back to you on that.
Okay, and then just one last question, Mr. Chairman. So in the Philly School District's testimony here, they're saying that they are underfunded.
Right.
But yet they're one of the highest funded school districts,
Right.
According to your data. So where is the discrepancy, do you think?
Yeah, so when they say they are underfunded, or they say they are historically underfunded, they are not thinking of a number. They're thinking of a court ruling. I know that your court determined in 2023 that schools are underfunded. They make that determination, and so usually that determination is made through a mixture of things, including student performance. And oftentimes courts see, well, if there is a problem with student performance, maybe it's a resource problem. I know that Philadelphia, what apparently the adequacy target for them is $1 billion more. It's interesting because they just got $1.1 billion from the federal government. So, and again, it takes time for these results to come in. I'm not trying to be unfair to the school district, but I am skeptical of the underfunding claim because, especially recently, we have seen states make real gains, especially from their COVID learning losses, that are low spending states. You know, some of the bright spots post-pandemic are states like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. These states have not invested nearly the level of resources as states like Pennsylvania or New York, and yet they're performing very well. So I think it's definitely easy to say that a school is underfunded. You know, part of it is we always want our teachers to be paid more, but I am very skeptical that $1 billion more is going to make any kind of difference for the students. I think they're going to hire more staff, but I would not be surprised if, you know, let's say they get $1 billion 5 years from now, it's not enough. So that's my answer.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair White.
So Christian, could you talk to us about, in your experience, reviewing publicly available information from various school districts around the country, in particular here in the Philadelphia School District? It's my understanding that, you know, they provide district-wide information and then per school information,
Yeah.
but it's not really like almost like line item by line item of what each school is spending with every single taxpayer dollar.
Right.
And I think that in maybe other states, or maybe you can share with, again, what your experience is, but what would you say are the best practices in that regard? Because I think with more transparency becomes more accountability.
Yeah.
And when those things are made available publicly, more eyes can see what items are being spent on, and then maybe people aren't approving certain things that they probably shouldn't be spending money on.
Right. You know, the quality of school finance data in general is not great. I don't know that I would point to any state and say, you know, they do a great job with transparency. There are states that have invested in tools such as Arizona, where you can see good, better quality school expenditure data. Part of the issue is that people are looking for different kinds of things. You know, people might want to know, okay, how much did you spend on the new playground? Somebody like me, I want to know, you know, again, how many more staff is the district allocating to this school when they've lost 20% of their kids? That's, in my opinion, where the transparency is needed. When you look at mismanagement, you know, we can talk about instances of superintendents, you know, or administrators being overpaid, but the meat, the money is where the schools are losing kids and the staff are not being reapportioned somewhere else. That is where the inefficiency is, in my opinion. And so as far as transparency, that's what you want to see. And I will say the federal government has added regulations or requirements that states start reporting school-level spending data. This is a new thing, and states are still, I would say, learning the ropes, and there are still areas where that transparency can be strengthened. Because for a long time, this is not something they had to do. The lowest unit of reporting was the district for decades. So, yeah, thank you.
Earlier, you had just shared with us the lower spending states like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, but they're getting better outcomes for kids. Could you share with us some of the, you know, means in which they've been able to accomplish that you've seen, or, you know, speak to how school choice impacts budgets like that?
Yeah, so I mean, importantly, you know, these are not necessarily school choice stories, but they did make investments in basically early curriculum. So reading curriculum, evidence-based reading curriculum, and retraining teachers. Apparently that's a fantastic investment and will, you know, be a much more efficient use of dollars than, say, adding hundreds of new instructional aides or support staff. I think that the Philadelphia School District has had some form of accountability with the presence of charter schools for a long time now. As we know, probably the enrollment losses that the district is dealing with is because parents do want to go to a school that's a better option. But I mean, what school choice does is it gives families somewhere else to go when they're not happy. They're able to vote with their feet. Now, what we see in the research is that, interestingly, school choice improves the performance of the public schools that are getting newly competed with. So what happens is when they can no longer take their children, their students for granted, they start being more responsive to what parents are looking for. And parents are looking for all sorts of things. It's not always test scores. Sometimes it's, they want different kinds of AP courses, or they want a music enrichment program. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Could you, this will be my final question for now, if we're going through another round of questions. Okay. So I would like to hear more about the vacancy of the buildings and you said it's about 50%. Could you go over that for us once more? With the number of students and what the school district is doing in terms of their
Closures.
the closures and the management of that facilities process.
Thank you for that question. So I can't speak to specifically, how they're managing certain facilities, but I know that the district has reported that in their current school buildings, they have, I think, a capacity for about 180,000 students. They have 118,000 students. What I covered is that nearly half of the district's schools have lost 20% or more of their kids since the pandemic. That was 5 years ago. That's a huge enrollment loss, and that's not an easy enrollment trend for any district to contend with. So, they're going to certainly have to go through a review process of what buildings are the most under-enrolled, but they are also going to have to look at factors like performance, building conditions, and I'll say this too, the big savings, we're talking about financial management, the big savings for school districts is in the labor that they employ. So for the district to really get, I think, in a stronger financial position, they also have to look at the staffing. They can't just look at the buildings.
Okay, I'll pass it on. Go ahead, Kristen, or Chairman, excuse me, Chairman.
Yeah, Representative Marcel.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have a lot of questions, and so if we're doing a second round, then I can save. Okay. So thank you so much for being here, especially Shannon, because of you sharing information about your children. I have a son who has an IEP, and we actually were able to get his IEP like the day that everything was shutting down with COVID. And when you spoke about being on a computer, like when he was 4, and he has focus problems, but, we could manage, trying to do that on a computer, but for the types of needs that your children have, for them to tell you that, like, I just wanted to apologize to you because I know it was hard enough for me with a young child that had issues focusing, but like to think about like all of the wasted time that children all throughout, not even just Pennsylvania, people were just saying, oh, sorry, just go do that on a computer. And so I just wanted to share that with you because that spoke to me a lot, that you were sharing that incident, because I went through that too. And I also just wanted to thank you for being such a brave person, not only for your children, but also for other parents, because by you using your voice to advocate, it's going to help other parents to hopefully do something similar. And I just wanted to thank you because I know, so I'm a member, I'm in the Council Rock area, Centennial, Central Bucks, and I talk to parents all the time about the importance of advocating for your child, whether they have special education needs or if they're regular education, whatever it is, like no one knows the child better than their parent. And that was something that my own father told me to make sure that I always advocated for my kids. So I just wanted to thank you because I think that is something that is such a huge lesson for parents and for, eventual parents to think about how you are such like this important part of getting getting them the services that they need, and especially at an early age, like early intervention, like trying to get those things to happen, and hearing about your daughter, saying those things, like it's such an important milestone. And if you think about it, if you wouldn't have gone through all those steps, maybe it would have even been later. And so I just wanted to just thank you, because that's really an amazing story, and it's a lot to share that personal information. So I just wanted to thank you. One question for you is that I mentioned to you that I'm all the time speaking to parents about how they can, be better educated about their rights and knowing about what to do. And you obviously have been through such a journey. I think that a lot of parents don't know. They don't know the process. And until you're in it, you don't really even know. And so is there a way that you think that we could help parents to have a better understanding other than just living through it? Is there information that you think is helpful, or something like online that you looked at? Or I'm just trying to think about ways to connect the information to the people that are going to need it.
So for me, it was more of parents speaking to other parents, parents who've been down that road. And my personal experience, my two younger kids, my son and my daughter, are on a hockey team, a special needs hockey team, and it's the Philadelphia Freeze. And everybody on that team has something, or not yet has something, had to do something with the school district of Philadelphia. And they're like, well, instead of doing this, do this. Instead of doing that, do this. And we kind of like correspond. We have groups, even on Facebook, the Autism of Philadelphia. There's other parent groups out there that these parents can reach out and say, hey, I have a question. What do I need to do, or who do I need to say? Me personally, I just went with my gut instincts. And I was like, something's going on and I need to fix it, because I'm not going to wait 2 to 3 weeks for an answer. I'm just going to go on my gut instinct, and I'm going to go and do what I need to do. Parents like yourself, like you said, advocating that's the main purpose of being a special needs parent. You have to advocate for your child, because some of the kids don't have voices, and we're their voices. So in all honesty, a lot of the kids that I meet with, and including myself with my daughter, I know she's not going to have a normal life. I know that. I already prepared myself for that necessary needs. I look at it as, all right, I'm going to teach her how to cook ramen noodles in the microwave, or how to put her shoes on correctly, or how to say thank you, or God bless you, or not to wipe your nose on your arm and then wipe it on your pants, like stuff like that. Even though she's 9, she still has the tendency of a 2-year-old. But advocating for your child is just the most important thing as a parent, especially, like I said, with a special needs parent. Because like I said, we don't have many voices for us. We don't have anybody to go and turn to. We don't have, celebrities or representatives who understand our situations, because in all honesty, if you don't live in our shoes, then how can you actually say, oh, I understand where you're coming from? Because honestly, you don't know our daily basis, or daily lives. So I do thank you for being a parent as well as an advocate, for your son, because in all honesty, he's going to look up to you for the rest of your life. And like I said, my kids look up to me and they think I'm a pain in the butt, but at the same time, they see me as Superwoman, because I'm doing 15 million things at once, and I'm making sure their lives are just perfect. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I just had a quick follow-up. There have been a couple of incidents in elementary schools in my district where there was a child in an autism program that ended up having an incident in the schools, and parents have talked to me about those. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about having special education rooms have video cameras in them, just for in case there's an incident and things needed to be reviewed.
I will 100% agree to that. I don't know if you noticed, it's not just here in Philadelphia, it's all over the place. I don't know what you found out about in the South, where an autistic teen, He was shot by the police officers because he had a knife behind his back, but they didn't understand he was autistic. He freaked out and they shot him. He unfortunately died 2 days after that. There were some instances where children are basically put in closets because they're either stimming and they don't know, the teachers don't know how to handle that stress. But I agree 100%, video cameras in special needs classes. And even if you have to talk to the parents and say, hey, look, this is for you, and this is for your, your sense of mind, there could be like you can go online and make sure your child's doing okay. I know there's an app on my phone where my daughter goes to right now. She goes to Step It Up Academy where they have video cameras, and I can actually log on and make sure she's doing okay. Because like I said, I'm a mama bear, so I am actually going to be the helicopter mom to make sure she's okay, because she doesn't have a voice, so I need to make sure she's doing okay. And they said, here's the website, and I'm like, oh, cool. So I go on and she's, being Brianna, and that's what I want to see. That's what I want to make sure my child is safe, because like I said, many of these kids don't have voices. They don't know how to express themselves, and that's the sad part. And a lot of these, schools are basically taking advantage of these parents, because a lot of the parents don't know what they're walking into. If there was if the school district had somebody that would actually go around to the school district and say, hey, if you have any questions, call me. Don't call them, call me, and I will tell you how to navigate this whole situation. A lot of us parents would be like, oh, we'll volunteer to do this. We'll sit out front with a table and chairs and we'll just talk to them, because that's a lot of what the parents want. They want somebody to go to talk to them and say, hey, are we losing our minds, or are we just crazy? Like, what are we supposed to do? If I had that in the beginning, I probably wouldn't be a helicopter mom. I probably would still be a mama bear, but I wouldn't be that extra helicopter mom at the same time. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I've got a couple questions myself, and we do have time for a second round. First of all, Shannon, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing this today. Thank you for taking the time. Let me ask you this. You touched on the reality, right, of what life is going to be like for your children. But if you hadn't intervened, if you hadn't stepped up, if you had not noticed, Brianna spent all of her time just sitting in the back of the classroom with some toys being neglected, what impact long-term has your intervention allowed to have on her ability to live a fulfilling life? Meaning, if had she been left in the back of that classroom and spent the entirety of her K-12 experience alone in the back of a classroom being ignored, versus what you have fought to get her to now, after she reaches that 12th grade and she graduates, what impact has that had on her ability to live a fulfilling life going forward?
Well, she wouldn't be able to talk. She wouldn't be able to say full sentences. Like I said, she has a communication device that she does use, but she prefers to speak on her own. She wouldn't be able to do that. She wouldn't be able to go to the bathroom. That was actually taught by me, by the ABA services and the Step It Up Academy, on how to basically be on her terms, not my terms. It's not my terms, it's her terms when she wants to, when she wants to be potty trained. She was actually potty trained at the age of 8.5. And like I said, we were never taught these terms and these lifelong skills until she got into this new school. If she still stayed in the public schools, in all honesty, I don't know what would happen to her. And that's my personal opinion. I don't know what happened to her. She wouldn't know where she lives. She does know where she lives now. But she types it on her communication device. Like I said, she can't fully speak, but she can do it on her device. She can say, I live at this, there's a keyboard. She types it out. She types out Outlook, and she's like, oh, that's where I live. If she still stayed in the public school, she would be forgotten. She would not know what to do, how to tie a shoe, or how to cook the ramen noodles, or she would know. She would have no idea. She's not, even today, with my son still being in that public school system, he is now finally learning his ABCs. He's 11. He's 11 years old. He's finally learning ABCs. He's finally learning how to read at a first grade level. He's 11. He's supposed to be in 5th grade. And I understand, like, some people were like, oh, he's on the spectrum. He should. I said, yeah, but at least he could read at the 2nd to 3rd grade level, not a 1st grade level. If he was pushed to the point where he was able to do that, then I would be like, okay, now I have to spend the money to get him tutored, and I have to spend the extra money to get him that special, the speech therapist come out to my home and teach him how to speak clearly, because he still can't do that. They keep telling me that his tonsils are so huge that it's blocking. I'm like, okay, when did you guys become doctors? I took him to 5 specialists, 5 ENTs, 5 other places, and they're telling me he's fine. He's breathing on his own. There's nothing wrong. You just got to work with it. Well, we can't do that. Well, I'm sorry, that's your job. You have to do it. You're paid to do a job, and you need to do the job. If you're not going to do the job, then you're going to have me to deal with. So, in all honesty, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I know Brianna's set. I can tell you that much. Brianna, the school system that she's in now, she's set till 22. My son, I have no idea what's going to happen. There's no high schools don't have those programs. There's no high school. Everyone's asking me if I should send them to the school that he's not on that severity level of autism. So he would just get lost, where I know he's semi-learning, but not to the point where I would say he's ready to graduate. I mean, it's how I feel.
Well, I think the uniqueness, I mean, even within your own family, right? The uniqueness of each child's needs, and every child in the Commonwealth, for some reason or other, has those unique needs. I think that's why, a lot of the educational freedom initiatives, I know that Chair White is a fierce proponent of, are exactly the type of thing we need a lot more of, because this type of excellent education that is setting Brianna up for success long term should be available to everyone, and it shouldn't take such a Herculean effort to just set your child up for success. Mr. Barnard, let me ask you something. Looking at this astronomical comparison of the explosion of administrative professional staff, right, compared to the teachers that are actually teaching, let me ask you, is there justification for that you're aware of from maybe the compliance standpoint or the regulatory standpoint? Because I just met with a hospital system yesterday that told us a quarter of their administrative staff is dedicated solely to meeting the demands of the bureaucracy. Their entire job is just to file government forms and collect data and do all these things that the Pennsylvania Department of Health requires of them. And then the Department of Health doesn't publish that data for 4 years anyway. So it's not useful to anyone. How are you tracking health data and making it relevant when it's 4 years old? So talking about the regulatory environment, is there a true bureaucratic demand that's creating this explosion of professional staff, or are they just funneling money to the wrong place, or is it kind of a bit of both?
Yeah, I do think it's a bit of both. The federal role in education has increased over time, and so has the state's role in education. I mean, I was talking earlier about, states having initiatives to improve curriculum, and those initiatives too can require more administrators. But I certainly would not expect that degree of administrative growth. Frankly, when school districts get funding, they're going to spend it, and the states that sometimes the state has to hold a district accountable through the formula it uses. If they lose kids, they lose dollars. And if they're losing kids, it to some extent makes sense that they're hiring outside of the classroom. But that level of staffing growth, I would be surprised if it was very justifiable at all, especially because the COVID relief funds, there were not a lot of strings attached to that money. So I can't see a large degree of compliance reporting precipitated by the federal relief dollars.
Is there any example of, because, one of the recurring complaints we get from public school districts is, well, the charters are costing us money, right? But the reality is, a student moves to a charter school, that student is gone, right? The school district no longer has the costs associated with that child. Mm-hmm. So when you have a reduction in student body count because those children are moving to our charters, are you seeing school districts making those commensurate adjustments to staffing levels, where if you can consolidate class sizes because you've lost 20% of your student base, are they making those sort of common sense adjustments to their staffing or not?
Only if they have to. So that either means they will make the adjustment if there's a reduction in state aid and they cannot get bailed out by their own property tax base. So if those two options are not at their disposal, they will make adjustments. If they have the option of increasing millages or getting more state money, that's what they're going to do, and they're going to maintain staffing. It's hard to let go of staff. School districts are built to grow, not to shrink. I mean, it's just simple as that. So if you want them to right size, to scale, there has to be some accountability to that process because it's not easy.
Do you see, and Representative Glenn, I'll turn to you in just 1 second. Do you think, I'm not a state mandate guy, right? Because I think anytime the
Right.
state passes down a mandate, it only increases burden. I'm all about the local control. But when the state is cutting checks, we're talking about hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to public education systems. Do you think there is room to have a conversation about creating some sort of tie either to a certain percentage has to go to teacher salaries, right? You can't spend all of your money on a brand new lavish administrative building while your teachers are denied a cost of living adjustment, or tying something. Is there room for that? Or does that only end up muddying the waters further?
Yeah, it's a great question because I'm not a state mandate guy either. I mean, that's a pillar of our advocacy is maintaining local control. But what we've also observed is that, I examined, from 2002 to 2020, nationwide, for every new dollar that was put into education, 7 cents went to instructional salaries. 7 cents out of every dollar. So I can see why states are frustrated that they're pumping money into education and barely any of it trickles into teachers' paychecks and it ends up going in other directions. So, I mean, I do not have an answer to that question because I don't want to make a state mandate either. There is an example of this under Governor Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas recently under the LEARNS Act. She earmarked funding for teacher raises and mandated that every teacher, she raised in 1 year the minimum starting teacher salary, $14,000. I mean, talk about a mandate. And it was funded just so to get them up to that point. It was very disruptive, but that's the kind of, I think, hands-on mandate you need if you want the money to get to the teacher salary. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying that's what you would need.
Thank you. I do want to recognize we have been joined by Representative Twardzik, who represents Schuylkill County. He had a Environmental Resources Committee hearing in another part of the state today, but he has joined us virtually. Thank you, Representative Twardzik. Representative Gleim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to dovetail real quickly off of something the chairman was saying. Now, the general accounting practices basically do provide guidelines to the school district saying that you shouldn't have more than 8% in your general fund.
Right.
But yet, almost every school district that I've
Over
looked at,
20%.
yeah, or like 12% and
Yeah.
up. And so, for Philly in particular, do they have a designated fund or undesignated fund or anything like that they're operating out of?
They have to now. So I think the state rule is that 8% can be uncommitted. And then anything above that has to be dedicated. So Philadelphia is new to this game of having to dedicate reserve money because they've never had enough in reserves to have a dedicated fund. So the state actually reports this, and I'm not sure what the money is dedicated for, but yeah, they have to have that money set aside. It does not have to, in some instances, the dedicated money has to be spent on that purpose. I think if the school board agrees. In other instances, they can just basically designate a purpose, but they're not necessarily held accountable for that.
Okay, so they could designate their overage to teachers' salaries, correct? Or does it have to go to capital reserve?
No. They could certainly dedicate it for cost of living, pay increases, but they have to have the reserves to do that. So.
Correct. I just wanted to make that statement there. Also, I was wondering if in your data, you know that in our current funding formula, the cost for charters is specifically tied to the debt per student or the cost per student. So as your cost per student goes up, and in this case it's $28,000 per student, that is directly tied to how much money then can be
Right.
is leaving and the cost for charters. Have you seen other states decouple the charter tuition from their funding formula?
Yes, in fact, most states don't do the Pennsylvania model of the pass-through funding. In my opinion, it makes actually cleaning up the data a headache, but this is not about my ease of research. I think it can make it more difficult to understand if you're getting your fair share, because then the charter school is working with the district, and they're getting tuition payments from the district. If there's anything we've learned, it's that having like billing from, a district to district, or a charter, a district to a charter, there's all sorts of games that can be played to claw money back. So most states, they treat charters as separate school districts. And they usually will tie the funding formula and say, you get the same funding formula as the public school, but they don't have to get the money passed through from the school district. That's the predominant model nationally.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. I advocate to do something with our funding formula. I think that it will actually solve a lot of problems. And I, have seen the testimony here today where, they say that they're not adequately funded, but the outcomes aren't actually matching that. And I just wanted to say something to Shannon. Also, thank you for being here. And something that you said really hit me, is that you don't want to wait 2 to 3 weeks for an answer. In my district, I just had a parent who has a child with autism who had a hard time getting the child up in the morning. So she would call for help and say, I don't know how, to manage this. And usually in the special ed or special needs section, they would send out help to a home of a child, especially with autism. And in this case, it wasn't happening. And so after 10 days, actually children and youth showed up at the home, not the school district. And they called me frantic, worried that the child was going to be taken because the school district wasn't responding with the help that the parent needed. And it ended up that the safety net was a charter school, so that they could at least be saying, my child is enrolled, the child is at home, they could sleep in and then take their, get their help online. And so I just wanted to say, I definitely understand a lot of the issues around special ed and special needs. My district has a high percentage of them, and I have to navigate that system a little bit as far as helping parents and telling parents, what is actually out there for them if they can't get the help they need. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for your testimony today. That's it for me. Thanks.
Chair White.
Thank you very much, Shannon, for your story and for your advocacy. What you've done for your children, Caleb and Brianna, is phenomenal, and you can tell how much it's already changed your entire family's life. So I'm proud of you for everything that you've done, and I'm so sorry that you've gone through all of this because, as electeds, we pride ourselves on trying to make our constituents' lives easier, and when we hear these stories, it's really heartbreaking. So thank you again for being here today and being brave enough to share this with us, because it's not that easy. When I've heard from other parents, from other people from within the district, and they didn't come forward today. And it's okay, because, fear is a big thing, and you don't want to have retaliation or anything like that happen. And unfortunately, you just can't ever be too careful here in Philadelphia. So I do have a question for you. And so from your perspective as a parent, what would you say is something that you need to see in order to feel that the school district is actually moving in the right direction?
Change. I want to see change. I want to see the change in the teachers. I want to see the change in the principal. I want to see I actually want to see more changes in the actual firm itself. You know, that's pretty much what any parent would ask for is change. If they can see the change, then yeah, we'll be right on that train with them. If we don't see it, then why would we even bother? We'll still continue the fight until we see those changes. So that's pretty much the only answer I can give you is change.
Yeah. No, I understand, and all of the different processes that you've had to go through and the length of time, even just getting one single response for a challenge that you were facing is, you know, those timeframes are unacceptable. You know, and again, as electeds, we have to be very responsive to our constituents. And, you know, when a school district has billions of dollars in taxpayer money at their fingertips, we need to make sure that they're answering to taxpayers like yourself. So we will do our best in terms of accountability, and so that you all do see the change that we also would like to see. On a separate question, I'll just come back to Christian, if you may. We are in the midst of Pennsylvania state budget. Are there any
Right.
cautionary tales you would provide to the legislature as we broach that subject?
Yeah, I understand that Governor Shapiro is trying to remedy some of these adequacy gaps, you know, from the court ruling. I think it's the Ready to Learn block grants. Is that what they're called? That's what he's using to supplement the district budgets to get them to these target numbers. Well, first and foremost, I would take a look at the formulas used to allocate those grants. I'm not alleging that there's necessarily anything wrong with them, but in my experience, you know, the remedy to getting adequacy is often fraught with the same kinds of politics that got you to inadequacy, you know, according to the court. So look at how the dollars in those block grants are allocated. But, you know, I'd also say that it's still the legislature's authority to determine what the funding is going to be for public education. States that have had prolonged adequacy lawsuits, it doesn't really go away. I mean, some of the best funded schools in the state, in New Jersey, for example, they have a similar kind of framework of adequacy targets, and they are constantly struggling to achieve those adequacy targets because they have to satisfy both new updated cost calculations that the state determines is necessary for an adequate education, and they're trying to protect districts that are losing kids from having to lose revenues. And it is this zero-sum politics every year. So I guess I'd just say, you know, be very diligent about how the new state dollars are proposed to be allocated. Yeah, thank you.
And I'll ask one more quick question of you. Have you seen in any other states any limitations on the debts that are able to be issued, like municipal bonds that are able to be initiated? In other words, you know,
Yeah.
you can only do up to a certain percentage of your, you know, state allocation or something like that.
I think usually the limitations on debt come through limitations on property taxes. So that's the avenue that I've seen policymakers use. So they'll have some kind of property tax growth cap or a truth in taxation law. That in itself will limit how much debt a school district can take on because they have to go to property taxpayers to satisfy that debt. So if they can't raise property taxes past a certain point, it's going to have kind of downward pressure on new debt. We have seen, you know, in Texas, for example, they have an efficiency audit law, I believe, where if a district wants to pass a bond or to pass a bond and they have declining enrollment, they have to basically report to the public some basic figures when the public is voting on that. So it's like a basic transparency measure to say, you know, hey, maybe they've lost 10% of their kids, and the public might be more skeptical of a bond project with that a facilities project with that kind of context.
Okay. And thank you again for your testimony today.
Representative Marcel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much again. Christian, I had some questions for you. So the background that I had prior to coming and being a state representative in my district was serving on a school board. And I did that for about 4.5 years before doing this position. And so a lot of times when I'm looking at numbers, like I almost think that like I'm thinking like a school board member, because that's what I did, for so many years. And I served during COVID when we were trying to figure out, how to pay for certain things, and ARPA funds and ESSER funds and all those types of things. So the reason actually that I got involved with school board was because of school closures in my district a long time ago, over 10 years ago. And so, those were driven by decreased enrollment. And so in the school district where I eventually became a school board member, they ended up closing an intermediate school. It was a middle school. And the reasoning for that was because they saw declining enrollment at the time, which was really kind of driven more by a downturn in the economy. But at the end of the day, it did help because they did not have to spend money on that building because it was very old. So they saved money for that. And then they also saved money from a staff perspective because of most likely, some retirements and then moving staff around. And so really, they were able to make their budget go down driven by those two things. And so when I'm looking at some of the enrollment trends for Philadelphia, it's interesting to me that you have this declining enrollment over here, but then when you look at on the revenue side of the money that's coming into the district right now, under the governor's proposed budget, I think Philadelphia School District would get about 18.7% of all of education funding across Pennsylvania. So they're getting about $2 billion out of 10.99, almost $11 billion. And so their dollars, it's like they're not necessarily worried about property taxes. Some of it is part of it. But I'm just saying that they're seeing declining enrollment, but they also have funding coming in, whereas some districts they're not going to be getting almost 19% of the state education funding. So they have to make those difficult decisions, like Council Rock, like the district that I used to be on the school board, to close a building and to make that, it's not fun, but they look at closures and consolidation, things that can save money. And I noticed that one of the takeaways was school consolidation and controlling staffing growth. And so do you have best practices from urban areas about consolidation? Like, is that something that other urban areas are doing, or just, other states? Because it seems like there has to be an action somewhere, because it's unsustainable to continue at this rate.
Yeah, there's a lot of cities grappling with this right now. I mean, it's not just Philadelphia that has this level of enrollment decline. I mean, there are a lot. I mean, most states, the projections pre-COVID to now post-COVID are so different in terms of what the public school population is going to look like. We were thinking a lot of states are going to be growing till 2030. It's not the case anymore. So there's a lot of districts going through this now. I have some general best practices. I mean, I've never closed a school. It's super disruptive. You see a lot of education reporting on it. They take input from families, and they should. I mean, it is, especially a school district like Philadelphia that's historic. There's buildings that probably parents and grandparents went to that they don't want closed for their kids. There needs to be a clear timeline, for the process. So what we see in a lot of states is a school will be on the chopping block for 10 years. We thought we were going to close it, but 2 years we're going to take another look at it. There needs to be a timeline and like a sense of the kind of urgency of the situation. I'm not saying they have to say, we're going to close minimum 25 schools or anything like that, but they need to have a clear timeline, because what happens a lot is if there's not a clear schedule for, hey, we're going to make final decisions for school closures by this date, then usually the decision can be delayed. And then don't just, think about it holistically, and I think the district is doing this. They're thinking about student performance, building conditions, but again, they need to also think about finances too. I've seen some reporting saying the district is not going to be closing schools for financial reasons, and my question is, why not? You know, that should be definitely part of your calculation. So definitely factor in finances, but as well as student performance, building conditions, things like that.
Thank you. And my last question is just a quick follow-up, is that I saw in the testimony from the district that they did have construction of 3 new school buildings. And so do you know, is there like a capital construction plan? I know that
Yeah.
in the district I served in, it's like for 30 years, and basically as soon as a building is built, it's like it's already like kind of added in at the back end, so that you're always maintaining, you know, and not letting
Yeah.
things fall behind. And so does the district, and I don't know if Representative White wants to share this or not, but I'm just wondering, do they have a plan?
Yeah, in their budgets, I assume a certain amount is going to be allocated to facilities improvement and construction every year. But Chairwoman White, you can probably speak to that a lot more than me.
Yeah, no, just, the school district does have a facilities planning process that they go through, and we talked earlier about how in Northeast Philadelphia, there's an overcrowding problem, whereas in other parts of in the school, and it's a very big school district, keep in mind. You know, in other parts of the city, they're half-empty schools. So, you know, it's certainly something that the school district is working through, but it is a challenge.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair White.
I want to thank you all very much for being here today. Representative Barb Gleim is our Deputy Chair of Education Policy, so I want to turn it over to her for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While we spoke a lot today about funding Philadelphia public schools, we know from the data that the higher funding is not translating into higher student outcomes. Higher numbers of administrators is not translating into better scores, behaviors, and in some instances, better special needs help. We don't have an adequacy gap, especially based on the data presented today. What we have is an honesty gap. The work that needs to be done with local, state, and federal officials needs to happen with haste and with transparency. The lawsuit that many underperforming districts keep referencing never had a dollar amount attached to it. We in the General Assembly are tasked under our Constitution to provide for the maintenance and support of a thorough and efficient system of public education. There is not a dollar amount associated with that. We know that we have laws on the books currently, Act 55, for example, that can adjust due to economic, reasons. We just don't have the fortitude to fix it. Increased state aid won't take care of the structural deficit or increase student outcomes. Across the board, explosion of professional staff has occurred, not just in the Philadelphia School District, but across the whole state. We are seeing a rise in the amount of administrators that there are with, less students or the same amount of students. And the future, and I've said this in other hearings that we had, is hybrid learning. So think about that for a second. We need to really start thinking outside the box on how our funding formula is actually impacting the amount of money that is flowing to all 500 school districts, and how it actually is then associated to our PA Ready Index or our Ready to Learn block grants, because they all act together as a unit. And I was going to also say in my closing that you can look to Governor Huckabee and some of the things that she is doing outside of the box and literally pulling the school districts along with her in order to create an environment that is healthy for all students. So with that, I will just say thank you for being here today and turn it over to the chairman.
Thank you, Representative White. I want to turn it over to Chairwoman White for some closing remarks as well.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So I think that something that is unique about Philadelphia is that we actually do not have an elected school board. And across the Commonwealth, everyone else does. They're accountable to the voters to ensure that taxpayers' voices are being heard. And right now in our city, it is a school board that is appointed by the mayor and approved by council. It's something that, the state used to have more oversight under the School Reform Commission, but that was tossed back in 2018. I think that moving forward, we need to really strongly consider some big changes, obviously from the testimony today, which again, I appreciate both of you being here in person to provide us the information. But I think that it's clear that the School District of Philadelphia has a lot of room to improve the way that they've been managing their finances. And hearing that, there's been more administrative type positions to the tune of almost 30% increase instead of more resources being allocated to the classroom and more professional teachers, that deeply concerns me. And I hope that over these next several weeks that, I can work together with the school district, the superintendent, school board members as well, to continue to work through some of the efficiencies and procedures that can improve things for our students and families and our taxpayers. So again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the members of the Policy Committee for being here today to help us identify these areas of concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair White, Representatives Marcel and Gleim for being here today. The future of Pennsylvania really is one of prosperity if we can successfully put students first and get Harrisburg out of the way. We believe on the House Republican Caucus that public schools are a core component of pursuing the American dream for many students across the Commonwealth. We have a solid track record of supporting adequate funding for those schools. Whether or not those schools have done their due diligence in appropriately applying those funds is yet to be determined. Education is not a one-size-fits-all industry, as we all know very well, and that's why we need a system that not only matches the needs of today, but meets the needs of tomorrow and meets the needs of students every single day. If a school is failing, we owe it to our constituents, to students, and to parents to make sure that we address that. I think that's why it's critically important that as this budget cycle continues, that we have that continuing conversation about making sure we are properly funding all educational options, whether it's government schools, whether it's school choice options, through the EITC, OSTC, or hopefully through this budget cycle we can actually achieve lifeline scholarships, because every student, whether in Philadelphia or any part of the Commonwealth, truly deserves access to that excellent education that allows them to pursue their American dream. So thank you all very much for being here today. This meeting is adjourned.